All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 2. Bryan Hayes, Jamie Noodles, McLennan. It's a Friday. I'm feeling good going into this weekend. The Jays are down in New York. You got the Leafs in Montreal tomorrow. It doesn't get any better than that. Leafs, Montreal, Jays, Yankee Stadium. It's a beautiful thing. I can't wait.
Well, those are, I mean, would you call the Blue Jays – they would be the least out of as far as like cornerstone organizations, as far as tenure, correct? Out of the four.
Tampa would be behind them in the division. But yes, it would be definitely Yankees, Sox, Baltimore have been around forever.
Right.
And then the Jays, and then Tampa's like a they're not really considered anything. I don't know what they have. What is their history? I know they win a lot. Like, it's not that they don't win, but the Trop is what it is. And
what I meant was you've got the Leafs and the Habs.
Oh, okay.
And you've got the Yankees and the Blue Jays. So those, that's some pretty long tenure in these leagues, right? Mm-hmm. And they're always, it's a great rivalry regardless of where they are in the standings and that. So it's great viewing. Premier viewing. That's what I'm.
If that's what you're driving at, you're absolutely right.
That's where I was driving at.
I thought you meant within the division, and I'm like, well,
no.
possibly,
I was more talking about like when you're, Leafs Habs on a Saturday night, whether it's at the Bell Center or it's at Scotiabank, like that's a ticket.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of Habs fans, there's a ton of Leafs fans. Like they travel well. Both, I think, organizations travel pretty well, and then. The Yankees are the Yankees. So that's it. There's no bigger baseball team than the Yankees.
Yeah, it's as big as it gets in terms of brands. I think internationally, I'm not sure where the Yankees stand anymore. They'd certainly be in the top 5. The Cowboys are obviously really high. I think in North American sports, it's the Cowboys and the Yankees.
Yeah.
Internationally, Manchester United would be in there. Madrid, Barcelona. There'd be a number of soccer teams.
For sure.
Clearly. But, the Yankees have to be a top 5 iconic sports brand around the world. And, you're right. The Yankees, Leafs, Habs, and it's going to be a fun one. And we've got a lot to get into today, including Keith Pelley, who will join us in about an hour. Right? Keith is officially on the job. He's now the president and CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. And it's going to be good to chat with him. I think it signals, a change of tone in that position because his predecessors, we never saw, we never heard from. They never came on the show. Like the last time a president or CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment came on was Tim Lewicki, right?
Yeah.
Lewicki would happily do the rounds, and especially when he first got here, like really, really not in your face, but like really loud about his plans and really, really open and honest about how even though he had just gotten here, he was kind of disappointed with the history, and he realized that things had to change and they were going to change.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the tone of the messaging will be from Keith, but he's stepping in here where it's kind of interesting what's going on under the umbrella of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, where when Lewicki got here, the Raptors were kind of where the Leafs are now, like a team that had been knocking on the door of the playoffs for a while. Felt like they could really turn it over and really take off at some point. And it took them a while to get there. But the Leafs were in a bad place. Toronto FC was in a bad place. I don't believe the Argos were even under the umbrella of MLSE. And now you got the Leafs who go to the playoffs every year. And will go to the playoffs again this year, of course. 8 years in a row, like you said. But the Raptors are in a really ugly place. Toronto FC's in an ugly place. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious what Keith is going to say on that.
I think, but he's got a clean slate, but he has a history with the city. I read an article about him today. Like, he grew up watching these teams. That's what he loved, and, he got an opportunity. I thought it was really cool. He said he brought a picture of his father that he used to, as a child, go down and placed it on the glass and was like, I'm home type of thing. And he's got a rich history in sports. Obviously, you might get to pepper him with a little bit of golf chat because I don't.
Possibly, yeah. He ran the European tour, right?
Exactly.
The DP World Tour. He was right in the midst of all that for a long time, and we'll sneak that in.
No, I think it's more about for me, like seeing what and I don't think he'll share, but what is his vision for the direction of the Leafs, the direction of some of these organizations? Like the Leafs are in good shape on the ice as an organization. You mentioned there's some others, there's some turnover. The Raptors are having turnover, TFC's having some turnover. So what does he envision for that situation moving forward?
Yeah, and dealing with a three-headed monster in terms of Tannenbaum, Bell, and Rogers, and it's been reported on recently that Larry Tannenbaum may not be a part of the fold with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment for much longer. And if that happens, then how does Keith Pelley envision ownership working together? And yeah, I mean, in terms of what is possible for growth in the city or in the country, I'm not sure how much more they can expand. By all accounts, reports have been indicating that they've turned down the opportunity to pursue a WNBA team. Sounds like Larry Tannenbaum will do that independently, but MLSE will be out of that. That is, I guess, one position they could take, maybe women's hockey, women's sports in general.
Yeah.
But everything else, they've pretty much got covered here. Like they've got NHL, NBA. They don't have technically Major League Baseball, but Rogers does. Maybe MLSE at some point brings that all into the fold, but that would be on Rogers to make that decision if they want to. I'm not sure they would.
Right.
So if it's not going to be within Toronto or within the borders of Canada, where else are you looking? And could Keith actually be looking where he was recently? Could he be looking to Europe and thinking, can we get into the Premiership? Can we get into whatever league might be available over there? Because that's where major international money is going, man. You get into the Premier League, you're making cash, and you're all of a sudden a truly international brand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there'll be no stone unturned, and with his experience, throughout the world now, not just in a small circle in North America, his experience throughout the world. He's going to probably be able to think outside the box for MLSE, which has, deep pockets, and, probably there'll be some bold moves. But it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds. I'm more selfishly, I just want to see what his vision is like locally.
Of course.
Because how it affects, I guess, our show day to day, talking about whether he has a different vision for the Leafs moving forward, whether he's going to have to, if he doesn't have a relationship with Brendan Shanahan and Brad Treliving, guys like that, because I'm sure they've crossed paths, he's going to have to develop one now, and they're going to vice versa, because he's the new boss. He's the sheriff.
It sounds as if it's not only like he's the new boss, like it stops on his desk, which I think we need clarity from that. I think he will give that to us. I'd be surprised if he doesn't, because he has bosses too. Clearly, Keith Pelley is the president and CEO, but Bell, Rogers, Tannenbaum, etc. But does he have autonomy over decisions like that? If he wants to move off Shanahan or Ujiri or Bill Manning, can he do that by himself? Like, obviously, it would have to be clearance, but would it be understood that he's going to get that? Because that, I believe, changed when Lewicki left. When Lewicki was here, they basically said, carte blanche, do whatever you're going to do. And he took an axe to that place, right? Everyone was out on the soccer side, the hockey side, the basketball side. And as a result, there had been a lot of positive seasons and a lot of positive results and a lot of winning, right? Toronto FC won a lot. The Raptors won a lot. The Leafs haven't won a championship, clearly, but they've been a playoff team every year for 8 years. In a well-run organization for a long, long time. But, how does Pelley see it? Because, again, if you take the names out of it, who we're all familiar with now, we're familiar with Shanahan, Ujiri, again, Bill Manning, and you just look at where the teams are, a new boss would probably not be ecstatic with the way things are going, right? Like the Leafs, I think, are separate, again, because they're a good team. We'll see what happens come the playoffs. But the Raptors are in a really bad place. Like they've lost 14 in a row. They're getting crushed. They're bottoming out.
Right.
I think in large part they get a pass because of Masai, because of the fact that they won a championship, because they had a great decade, which they did. Sports is cyclical.
Yep.
But it's pretty ugly. Toronto FC, they were great. They were the cream of the crop in MLSE for years. Yeah. They've been a mess for a couple of years, like a really bad scene. And they spent a lot of money there. So I'm quite curious to see what Keith is willing to tell us on that. Keith Pelley coming up just after 5 o'clock. As for the Leafs, you see the lines every once in a while. I would say about 2 or 3 times a month, there's a practice day where you're like, all right, I'm curious what Keith is going to do here.
Yeah.
Like, what is he going to tell us about, the lines and maybe about his plan? And it doesn't matter as much in October, November, December, because you understand there's a long road ahead. Injuries are going to pop up. Guys are going to play up and down the lineup. Trades are going to happen at the deadline, and things are going to change. But we're 2 weeks away from the playoffs. Like they likely have game 1 2 weeks tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if you look at the lines today, and I think Joe from the Bridge can pop them up on TSN too. I like the way it looks, but I think what sticks out is Marner's back. He's going to play tomorrow, and he's sticking with Matthews, Bertuzzi, Domi, McMahon, Tavares, Marner, and he's got Nylander on the third line with Pontus, Holmberg, and Matthew Nyes, and Nick Robertson is out. So he's going with Dewar, Kampf, and Reeves on the fourth line. What do you make of that?
Well, again, we always overanalyze, but it's something right in front of our eyes. So a couple things. You guys made a strong case, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, Wednesday, for that top line to stay. We'll call it top line, to stay together. Mm-hmm. Bertuzzi, Matthews, Domi. Chemistry, playing very well. Found a role for Max Domi. Bertuzzi has found, his mojo. So that line, you could make an argument. They're kind of chugging. Let them be, right? Mm-hmm. The question was Marner just going to hit the ground, come right back in? So I thought, okay, Nylander to the third line. It's interesting, because he hasn't done anything wrong. He's played a great season, career year, but the right side is their strength technically because you've got Marner, Nylander. Now, Max Domi to the right side is just because he's found a home temporarily, we'll call it, with Auston Matthews. Robertson, for me, I still think there's more there. So I'm not as broken up about him coming out. It's interesting. If you would ask me, Ryan Reeves being a mainstay on the fourth line, if you would have said that to me 6 weeks ago, I would have said, we all would have laughed you out of the building type of thing. But he's found a niche. He's found a role. I don't know how long it'll last, but he's been very effective. Ryan Reeves deserves a ton of credit. He's played hard. He's played physical. He's fought. He's done everything they've asked him to do, and he's kind of settled back in. Where Robertson, it's not a slight on him. It's more, hey, Mitch Marner's coming back. Somebody has to come out. Mm-hmm. And Ryan Reeves is playing great. You could argue that Robertson's...
Maybe Dewar could come out, but...
Yeah, but I think they're trying... I think Dewar's a guy they traded for a specific reason. Mm-hmm. I don't believe he's coming out. Robertson has more offensive upside, but I think what they're looking at with Dewar is... We need chemistry on the fourth line. We need a guy who can play every night, play hard, kill penalties. That's Dewar. So, trusted, a little bit, older, that type of stuff, older than Robertson. So I think it's unique. Now, it can obviously change, but if that's the lineup going against Montreal, you got to have Marner back in, and obviously in the top six. That's the thing. So Willie kind of bites it on that one, mm-hmm. which. Again,
but I look at it a few different ways.
What do you look at it like?
I think Willie, what he has proven this year is he can drive his own line. I don't think obviously he would like help. I think to get the most possible impact out of him, this applies to every great player, is you give him other players that can ride with him. But I think he's a line driver. Like, that's what he's done all year. He is driving lines. He is driving offense. Plays go through him. And Yarncroke still being out is going to factor into this too. If and when he's healthy for the playoffs, he's playing. He will likely play. I wonder if Reeves comes out there. I wonder if he plays on a line with Nylander and they move Nyes down. There's a number of different things that could apply here. Or Holmberg comes out. I'm not sure. But I look at it like I like this because I would keep Matthews with Bertuzzi and Domi. A, Matthews has not missed a beat. B, Bertuzzi's come alive, right?
Right.
And I think that's significant. We keep talking about Domi because of who he is, and he's fun to watch, and he's energetic, and of course we lean on Matthews. Bertuzzi's playing great right now. And it was a real struggle for him. But when they brought him in, they wanted him to be a guy that can make an impact for them. And he's doing that. And it's not just because of Matthews. I think it's because of Domi as well. Like, they're all mixing properly. Where if you take one of those ingredients out, it may affect Matthews, but it also may affect Bertuzzi. And I think they want Domi in the lineup somewhere. And they don't want to play him up the middle of the ice. They don't want him in like a checking position necessarily. Matthews is really good defensively. Matthews is going to lead the charge. And, I like the idea of keeping them together. So, this makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know how long it will last. And I think
Right.
what's going to happen here and what's going to have to take place is Sheldon Keefe's going to have to coach his ass off here because he's going to have to shift, right? He's going to have to move pieces around throughout the game because you don't want Nylander. Like, this is also the nature of us labeling it line 1, line 2, line 3.
Right.
You can start wherever. If at the end of the game you've played 19 minutes, you're not a third liner, right?
No.
And I think that's going to be on Keefe to find extra shifts for Nylander, to find shifts for Marner, to move Matthews around with different players, find better matchups. Obviously, if the whistle is happy those games, there's going to be a lot of power play opportunities. Willie's killing penalties now. Marner will return and kill penalties. So if you can get 18, 19 minutes out of Nylander, 20, 21 out of Marner, I don't care really where they are to start the game 5-on-5. And ultimately you've got to try to highlight your best assets. And I think if one thing's been proven over 8 years, this idea that the only way they can win is if Marner's with Matthews and Nylander's with Tavares, you haven't been paying attention because they've been playing together for 5 years in the playoffs and it hasn't worked.
Won. Yeah, exactly.
So why would you not try something different? And again, or just continue what's been going pretty well for you because you have to have faith that Matthews is going to show up and play, Marner's going to show up and play, Nylander's going to show up and play. Those are young guys in their prime that you've paid. Those are your best players. They better show up, whoever they're playing with. They better show up and play. So I think the thought process is, how do we make sure Bertuzzi does too? How do we make sure Domi contributes? How does McMahon contribute? Because it's so hyper-focused, right, on, well, what about Matthews? And will Marner be happy? And what about Willie?
Yeah.
Those guys, they better be, and they're pros, and they're the leaders. Whoever they play with, they better show up and perform.
Wow.
It's the other guys that you got to maybe try to poke and prod and prop, and I wonder if that's what Keefe is thinking right here.
Probably, and I think what you said makes most sense. It doesn't matter how you arrive at 19 to whatever minutes. Mm-hmm. If you're still getting ice time, you're now being paid to perform. And I've been told that William Nylander just cares about minutes and making sure that he's contributing. Mm-hmm. So regardless, it's a good thing. And I like that's a feather in his cap. He wouldn't, it speaks to him just not getting disjointed about wherever he's in the lineup. So if he happens to be, like you say, quote unquote, on the third line, what does it matter if he's on the first power play, if he's getting some extra, if, like you said, Sheldon's finding a shift here, doubling down in certain situations. That's the beauty of in-game adjustments. That's, you can, on paper, it looks like this. 10 minutes into the game, it could change.
Yeah.
That's really what'll happen. So it speaks to, if you get everybody healthy, now you've got some depth where you can play with, and it's, it's some in-game competition outside of the guys that you're paying the big bucks to. So, if Bobby McMahon wants more ice time, you got to go out and earn it.
Absolutely, as it should be.
And Matthew Nyes and go right down the line to Connor Dewar and Holmberg. And, I think eventually those guys might be pushed out of the lineup. Yarncroke comes back. You start, moving around. There's no guarantee Ryan Reeves is going to play every night.
No, but of course not.
I would say, I think he start, like, I'm leaning towards, I don't know how you feel, I think he's starting game 1 of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I really do, but I think it's more just a message as to, like, we've got this here if you want to mess around. If not, then, it might not be that scenario the whole time. I don't know why, but whether it's effective or not, I don't know. But at least it's a dynamic that you have an option for.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's likely happening, and then adjustments will be made. And if you're on the fourth line of any team, outside of some historically like great fourth lines that just found a role, connected, and played all the time.
Yeah, the Detroit fourth line there.
Detroit,
with
exactly. Maybe
Draper and
McCarty, maybe the best ever. The one in Tampa with Perry and Maroon, and in Boston they had some fourth lines over the years.
Greg Campbell and Sean Thornton.
Yeah.
And,
there was a Daniel Paille was on that line.
Yeah, I think it was Paille or Chris Kelly. Can't remember.
It might have been
which
Chris
one
Kelly.
Yeah,
it was.
Like that was. But you're right. Like, unless it's like this fourth line that is like, even like the Islanders' fourth line for years, it's been Cizikas, Martin, and Clutterbuck. Right.
Yeah.
Unless you've played together for 5 years and that's been defined and that's it. It's mix and match. And what are you going to give me? So, Nick Robertson got a taste. Obviously, if he looks to be like he's going to be out, it might be a one-game-out situation.
He could have to get back in there. There could be injuries between now and game one.
Exactly.
And this is an important time for him to prove, I'm going to show up, work, be the first at the rink, last to leave, and I want to get in the lineup. All right, Mike Johnson coming up later in the hour. Game's over down at Yankee Stadium. The Jays win 3-0. 7 hits, 3 runs, and it's enough. Kikuchi was brilliant today. He got himself out of a couple of jams, some of them self-made, some of them umpire-made. I thought the umping was horrible early in the game, and Schneider had a furnace face going. He was freaking. But then they go to the bullpen. Garcia, Cabrera's back, Richards, Green, they all pitched incredibly well. Stroman pitched pretty well, too. In fact, he pitched very well, but ends up walking away with I believe, no decision on his front. But Ernie Clement hits a home run, and the Jays rally in the ninth and put 2 more on the board. There was an error on the Yankees, and now they're 4-4. They could get the offense, like watching it, and I watched the large majority of the game until we came on. It wasn't pretty. It was not pretty. But Ernie Clement pinch hits for Biggio, and he goes deep, and they get on the board, and the pitching held up, and this is the crazy thing about baseball and about the Jays. It's eerily similar to last year, where the offense is really frustrating. Vladdy and Bichette are really struggling, but the pitching and the defense has been really good for the most part, at least in the games that they've won, where they're 4-4. And now you got a chance. You can find a win tomorrow. You win the series at a minimum, and you're going for a sweep on Sunday. So it comes at you quick in pro sports. And, again, it wasn't pretty, but it doesn't matter. Right? Like we always say, it's not how, it's how many. And the Jays get a win today.
Agreed.
So Steve Phillips coming up later this afternoon. We'll get Steve's take on the Jays through 8 games, what he's seen out of them at the plate, but also on the mound. And, Marcus Stroman, how he looked as a Yankee today. Looked pretty good. All right, so Phillips coming up. Mike Johnson coming up. Keith Pelley, the new president and CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Keith will join us just after 5 o'clock. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Mike Johnson coming up here in a moment. Got a big one tonight in Edmonton, Colorado.
Yeah, it should be a good game.
Yeah. This is a big one because, Vegas is on the heels of the Oilers. Vegas is playing Arizona tonight. I assume they get that win.
Yeah.
If they do and the Oilers lose, watch out. Home ice could be up for grabs. Vegas will be a point behind them.
Yeah. Any games in hand? Let me look at that there.
Yeah, Edmonton's got a game in hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Edmonton did not play well against Dallas, so they need a response. And, this is a good litmus test. Colorado's a hell of a team. They're a good team. Dallas is a good team. We've talked about it. There's about 8 to 10 teams that you could literally circle and go, yeah, it's a really good team. So, I watched Florida last night. That was more like Florida. Ottawa was terrible, though.
What is going on out there? I mean, I heard Tkachuk after the game, and we can play the audio at some point. I'm sure it's incredibly frustrating because it's his brother, too, that he's just losing to all the time. But
well, yeah. I talked to some, the Florida guys before the game, and they want to get healthy, they want to feel good. They were 2-7-1 coming into last night's game, but they had some guys that were sick. Ekblad was out, Verhaeghe will be out for a week or whatever. So they've got some moving parts, but they looked a lot more like the Florida team that we expected, and Ottawa just had nothing. They were down 2-0. I think it was 90 seconds into the game. Mm-hmm. You start going into, it's tough at that point because you start going into big picture when you're talking because, you can't just be pointing out mistake after mistake. And, so but you're right. Switching over to Colorado, Kucherov got 3 points last night. McKinnon, that's
it's a race, man. Yeah,
it is a race, man.
McDavid got skunked like the rest of the team in Dallas, so that's a rarity. He's coming off a game where he didn't have a point. Yeah. And Kucherov had a goal and 2 assists, and Tampa won in Montreal last night, and Kucherov is up to 132 points.
I know. That's his career high, right?
Yeah, his career high was 127. He won the Hart when he did that, back in 19, I think it was, and that's what's been amazing about this stretch run is Kucherov's probably going to end up with 45 goals and 140-something points. And McKinnon probably hits 140. McDavid probably gets there. Like, it's
Yeah.
just a formality, I think, until McDavid hits 100 assists. And even Kucherov's at 90 now. He's got 6 games left. He needs 10 more assists. That's
Possible,
massive. And when
maybe.
you look at the discrepancy between the amount of points he's put up and the amount of points Braden Point, who is second in points on that team, has put up, I saw it this morning.
It's 47 points or
47.
something. Yeah.
That is massive. And I saw who was posting it. I think it was
Mike Kelly, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was Kelly. I think it was Mike. And Mike was even pointing out, because on the list, like Pasternak last year had a huge discrepancy as well in terms
Marchand.
of over Marchand. And yet, McDavid won the Hart, but you understand, Pasta had 60 goals and lapped his own team, and they had more like points than anyone in NHL history.
It's crazy.
So maybe Pasta should have got a little bit more love, but we were so focused on Connor for obvious reasons. But still, maybe we owe Pasta an apology for jumping on people that anyone that suggested maybe he should have been up for the Hart. He only finished 4 goals behind McDavid.
Yeah.
A number of points, clearly. But here's Mike Johnson, our TSN Hockey analyst. What's happening, Johnny?
What's going on, boys? Listen, I did the Tampa game yesterday. And, so you got a full dose of the PR team of Kucherov selling his virtues, and they're not wrong. Like, it's pretty incredible. I think it's 48 points now after last night, the difference between him and Point. The last time anyone's been close to that is Ovi's rookie year. He was 49 ahead of Dinah Zubris blast from the past. But he's been that good. So what are you going to say? And then when you think of the gap and the fact that Tampa's rolling now, Tampa's going to be close to a 100-point team. Like, it's, there's a lot there all of a sudden for you to kind of think about when you're thinking, even if it's McDavid or McKinnon, which sort of conceded to. And I wonder how much of it is, forwards, wingers versus centermen. Like wingers, like Pasta last year as well. Like, they just aren't as important. I think everyone knows that. That probably hurts their case. But yeah, it's incredible what he's doing. And if he sniffs 100 assists, like we said so much justifiably talking about 100 assists with McDavid, who's going to get there. If he becomes the 5th person all time to get 100 assists and he wins the scoring trophy, and he beats McDavid by 10, 12, 14 goals, like, I don't know. It's hard to say that he wouldn't deserve it over him. So it's great. It's a great race. It's fascinating and fun to watch. But maybe Kucherov does deserve a little more attention in it.
Yeah, I agree, Johnny. I'm just looking at it. Tampa with the win, they're 2 points behind the Leafs. Like, in a perfect world, you want both teams, or if you're a Leafs fan, you want the Leafs to be playing well and feeling good about their team. But would you not mind if Tampa passed them, kind of thing, or that just gives you Boston in essence if the Rangers end up winning the league, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if they finish 7th, if Toronto does, they get likely Boston, but maybe the Rangers. I don't know if the Rangers are that much better or easier an option than Boston. I mean, either way, the top 4 teams are all going to be really hard. And I guess, Florida, you might say they've been struggling other than last night where they pounded Ottawa. Maybe that because their form and maybe injuries. Florida seems more vulnerable, but I mean, pick your poison. And I think the idea for Toronto is you want to be feeling good, and that's all you can control because you're going to play a team that is going to really challenge you. Each will be a bit different in the way that you have to play that series. Boston they haven't beaten in a couple of years. Florida they lost to last year. Carolina barely loses right now, and the Rangers are the best team in the East. So I don't know where you want to go. You just want to feel like you're playing well, and I think that's the downside. Let's say Toronto has 7 games left, and they go 4-2-1, pretty good, and Tampa goes 6-1, and Tampa passed them because they have the tiebreaker. They end up tied with 104 points. The Leafs will feel like they've been caught and passed and somehow stumbled, even though they haven't. And there's just that, like you just want to feel like you're playing well, and after that, it's sort of up to how you do in the matchup in the first round.
Yeah, the chips are going to fall as they fall, and if it's Florida, Boston, New York, they're going to start on the road. They're going to be an underdog, and it's on them to overcome that. And a big part of it, like you said, is Mojo going in. is health, is finding goaltending, exactly. And they're starting to get some guys back. Riley returned a couple of nights ago, and now Marner's going to return tomorrow. And the lines at practice, which is also a rarity, they never practice. They did have a full practice today, and obviously what people are focused on is that as of now, Keefe's got Bertuzzi, Matthews, and Domi sticking together. He's got Marner in there with Tavares and McMahon, and he's got Nylander with Holmberg and Nyes, and Robertson's coming out. What do you make of that?
So we had this conversation last week, right? And the options about what you do with Marner returning. And I think there's a lot of merit in keeping Bertuzzi, Matthews, and Domi together, throughout the rest of the regular season and maybe even to start the playoffs. Because you can put Marner back there and Marner and Matthews works. We know that. We've seen it for years. But Bertuzzi and Domi now, you're really maximizing your other players. And Mitch Marner is good enough that he can play with Tavares, he can play with Holmberg, whoever, and carry a line on his own. But you might be really decreasing the effectiveness of a Bertuzzi or a Domi if you take them off Auston Matthews' line. I like this idea. And I mean, whether it's Marner further down the roster or whether it's Tavares further down the roster, you're giving William Nylander a 100-point score. Third line, Phil Kessel, HBK matchups. This is what they're doing, right? Essentially, and trying to go with that. And I think defensively, Marner helps Tavares because of his speed and because of his acumen. Kind of just making good plays with the puck, whereas, Willie doesn't do that as well as Mitch Marner. And so Tavares sometimes maybe needs help with that. You can really, not on the road so much, but you can really give sheltered minutes to that third line group. And Nyes is talented. Nylander's talented. I like the idea for sure to try it now, to try it for the next 10 days, whatever. And then see how it goes. As far as Robertson goes, sucks being the odd man out. I think if it was going to be a top 9 player that has to come out, it was him or Bobby McMahon. And I think just the size of McMahon, and I think the fact that he's worked well with Tavares makes him more likely to be the guy. And I almost wonder, I don't know when Calle Jarnkrok's going to reappear, but if he's ready to go in the playoffs, that's another top 9 guy that's going to bump somebody else, probably bump Holmberg further down, or maybe, who knows what happens there. So Robertson sort of gets the short end of that decision, knowing full well, based on matchup, based on opposition, based on situation, the fourth line, other than David Kampf, is completely fluid. Whether Ryan Reeves plays or doesn't, Dewar plays or doesn't, Dewar probably gets an edge because he kills penalty, and the penalty kills actually gotten quite a bit better. But Robertson's not banished forever. He can find his way back onto the ice very quickly. It sort of makes sense, and I appreciate Sheldon Keefe. I don't know if this is a hard decision. I don't know if William Nylander knows that a joint right now, thinking why am I on the third line? I would think hopefully not, given what he's done this year, and he's got his contract and everything else. Just go play and do what's best for the team. But it's not the easy decision. It would have been easier just to put the top 6 back together with a big 4 and let the bottom 6 figure themselves out. But he didn't do that, and I agree with it. And I'm glad he sort of took a bit of a unconventional approach, because I think it makes their team potentially deeper, potentially better.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's an orchestra. You got to find out where everyone's supposed to sit and play. It's not just, well, you're more talented, you make more money. They've done that for a long time, and it's gotten them as far as they possibly could. They're going to try a different tact, and they haven't even played a game yet. So who knows what's going to happen come game 1, let alone game 2, 3, 4, and beyond. But even on defense, they've got Riley, Lyubushkin, Benoit with McCabe, and Giordano with Brody, and that would lead me to believe Giordano is a placeholder until Edmondson returns. Is that how you see it? Riley, Lyubushkin, Benoit, McCabe, Edmondson, Brody, game 1?
No, I'm not yet conceding that. I think Giordano, yes, unfortunately for Gio, that he is the placeholder. I think Edmonton will obviously play on the left side where Gio is right now. The question becomes, does Brody go with McCabe or does Benoit? And then what happens? Does Liljegren go for Brody on the third pair with Edmonton? Edmonton and Liljegren have been good when they played together. So they've been good. And it's a lefty-righty thing, and we know how much they like that. That, to me, I still think the question becomes, do you put Benoit or Brody with McCabe? And then based on whoever's there, who plays with Edmonton? If it's Brody up there, then I think it's Liljegren with Edmonton and Benoit's out. If it's Benoit up there, does it become Brody with Edmonton and Liljegren out? Like, I think that still remains to be seen. It's fascinating. It's great to have options, and I guess it's great to have guys getting healthier and everyone available to you. But they haven't had a ton of time to sort of figure it out and really dissect what works really well. But we know Edmonton's going to be there. I think Riley Labushkin is a guarantee as well. But I just don't know about what happens with Brody and McCabe, what happens with Brody and Edmonton. Like, those guys haven't played together, Edmonton and Brody, like almost at all. So it's not like you have a lot of, tape to figure out that's a really good assignment for them or whatever it might be. I just don't know. I don't think it's done yet, though, Hayes. I think they're still, depending how guys play, matchups, whatever, that's not set in stone.
How about your goaltender? I mean, I know people, they didn't love Woll's game. I'm sure you guys talked about it yesterday. But he's coming back off of injury. He's still, still trying to find his way at the NHL level, really. Is Samsonov like game one starter, but you give him a shorter leash? Like, where are you? Are you going to give Samsonov a little bit more down the stretch here? You're going to try and get Woll in there so that it's still a healthy competition.
No, I think we're almost at the point now with 7 games left. You know, the Samsonov play 4 and Woll plays 3. Whatever, is it 5 and 2? I think Samsonov's the guy. I think at this point it's what do we do to get him feeling his best while also not ignoring the fact that the other guy might have to play as well. It's Samsonov for me. He's going to be the guy, and hopefully that you don't need to find out how ready Joseph Woll is, but you might as early as the game 2 or game 3. So, but I don't think the way Samsonov has sort of responded since being called back up. All the numbers so much stronger. His confidence seems to be back. It's amazing, because with every future success he has, Noodles, he sort of gets asked about like where he's come from, like kind of reminded how bad it was, which would be a hard thing, I would think, sort of mentally to dissect, where you're always being reminded like how crappy things went. And he just seems to be in such a good place mentally about, it's like it didn't even happen. He's wiped the hard drive. It's like it hasn't even happened at all. And if I'm on the team, if I'm Sheldon Keefe, I love that. Like, that's the guy I want feeling that way in the net.
So Pittsburgh goes into Washington and wins last night. And now we have a significant logjam.
Yeah.
We really got to race, because
you got to give does Crosby sneak into your heart like conversation, Bryan?
No, I don't think so.
No, let's not. I mean,
hold on a second here. If Pittsburgh makes the playoffs, you wouldn't have Crosby as your 5th pick for the Hart?
No. Who's he ahead of? What about Panarin? They're the best team in the league. He's
Panarin
miles.
Deserves love. Yeah.
Trocheck and Lafreniere are there. What about Pasternak? We just talked about. What about Auston Matthews?
Well, no, Matthews is in Matthews would be in my
So
top
the 3 big guys plus Matthews plus Panarin plus Pasta plus Hellebuck plus Yossi. I think it would all
Quinn Hughes.
And maybe Quinn Hughes.
Oh, you're right. I guess.
Listen, Sid's been great.
Just jumped on me.
Sid's been great. What I was surprised by,
holy
I don't think
smokes! I was waiting for a little love. Like, you're right. Like, you guys.
Listen,
you're an idiot,
narrative. the narrative is accurate, Noodles. What you're expressing, if you take out what everyone else has done. Here's a guy that's dragging, and he's getting credit for dragging him in. I don't think he was on the game sheet last night. I might be wrong. But I don't think he had a point last night. He did not get a point.
But I mean, this guy is literally having another amazing year.
He's been great.
The team has been a train wreck, like legitimately.
And they were sellers at the deadline. Where I go with this is now he's not going anywhere this summer. And I don't think he was really anyway. But now it'll be, we're actually close. So if they miss, they're going to miss again by like 2 or 3 points tops, just like last year. And now it'll be, we came together down the stretch, and Sully had us, pushing the right buttons, and Nedeljkovic was great, and he'll be back with Jari, and everything's going to be all good. And I think that is a smokescreen. Like someone's going to backdoor in here with like 89 points.
It's going to be so greasy.
Yeah.
So greasy.
Like, none of them are that good. None of these teams are that good.
Going like, what's going on over on our side?
Yeah,
we're not even close to it.
What is the projected cutoff? I thought it was 91 in the East and maybe like 93, 94 out
I don't
west,
think
Johnny.
any of these teams are getting to 93 Noodles because
No, 91
even
in
that,
the East.
like Philly's got 6 games left. They would need 8 points.
4-2 gets 91 for the Islanders and Philly. I bet 90 ends up in a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
And even like you think 91 for the Penguins, they got to go 5-1 down the stretch. And have you seen Pittsburgh's schedule? It is murderer's row. It is really, really, really tough. It's the Rangers and Carolina and Nashville and Boston and Toronto. Like it's the top. It's 6 of the top 10 teams in the league. Mm-hmm. So like they're going to roll through that. Not very high. I think I just checked on Money Puck. They're like 20% to make the playoffs only. So it's much better than the 5% it was 4 games ago. But still, they're a long ways away, despite being so close in the standings with the tiebreakers, which are not in their favor and the games played. But listen, Sid's been incredible. He's been absolutely incredible. But like he's also been there all year, right? Like it's not like he hasn't had good players to play with all year. Gensel was there all year, and Rust and Letang and Carlson and Gino, and good players are around. They just have struggled through no fault of his. But yeah, I'm with you, Hayes. Like I think it's fool's gold if you think Pittsburgh with this team is close to the playoffs. Like if Kyle Dubas is thinking, okay, well, you know what, couple tweaks, we're right back at it. No, sir, that is not. You might be right back in the same spot, 6, 7, 8 in the conference, maybe make the playoffs, but not really have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. That's not where they want to be. That's not where Sid wants to be. But that doesn't mean he's going to leave. I don't think he's going anywhere at all. No. But I also don't think he's going to go in the playoffs. And if he makes the playoffs, they're not going to go anywhere in the playoffs.
No, that's another truth. Is someone's going to get in and play Carolina, the other one's going to get in and play New York. Now there is
a
history.
Week.
Yeah, but if it's the Islanders and the Rangers, and the Islanders muck it up, and all of a sudden, you've got a Sorokin standing on his head, like it's possible. I could picture that where it gets nasty.
Got the Florida scenario, like the Florida made it last day of the season. Now, but the Islanders and Pittsburgh and them didn't win the President's Trophy the year before, like Florida did. Like
exactly,
a lot
and
different.
I don't think have as much like high end talent Pittsburgh does historically, clearly, but.
All you want right now, Hayes, is Philly. Somebody wants Philly to make it and wants to play Philly.
Yes.
Like Carolina right now is like, please status quo, and we get Philly in the first round. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, always have a chance. Never want to discount anyone. They're all pros. Not trying to be disrespectful. But, like, that would be, like, almost more surprising than Florida knocking off Boston last year. Like if Philly at an 87, 88, 89-point team was able to do some damage in the first round.
Yeah. Anything's possible. We'll see. We're only 2 weeks away. All right, Johnny. Enjoy the weekend. We'll do it again next week.
All right, boys. Have a great weekend.
You got it. Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. All right, Steve Phillips still to come on the Jays. Squeaking one out today. Opening day at Yankee Stadium. They win 3-0. Kikuchi was outstanding. The bullpen was great. Ernie Witt Clement came in. Pinch hit. Goes yard. Jays are 4-4. It's all good, Noodles. It's just positive vibes around the Jays.
500 gets you positive right now. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, road trip, you got
Tough road trip, man.
Exactly.
Tough roadie, and they're 4-4. So Phillips coming up on that and more later this afternoon. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Keith Pelley coming up in about 15 minutes. A pretty wild and hilarious scene in France earlier today. We will show you the video if you're watching, and we'll explain it on radio and podcast and web a little bit later. It just could not be a worse situation for one guy in particular. We'll tell you about that. And Noodles, you're getting a lot of support online. I'm seeing Dave and others tweeting in saying, what's wrong with throwing out Sid the Kid as a top 5 Hart guy?
Noodles, listen, it's so funny, though. So Muddy, Brian Mudrick sends me a note. He goes, who went harder, Button on Hayes' lack of World Junior viewing or Johnny on Noodles' Crosby Hart pick? And all I was doing was like trying to make some banters, like, and give Sid some love. And it's like Johnny's like, "Who are you taking out?" Start yelling at me.
Who's coming out? Pasta, Panarin.
But you know what? He's not wrong because Panarin, Pasternak, Matthews, McDavid, you name it, McKinnon, Kucherov. Like, there's names. There's plenty more names you can put in front of there. Hellebuck, you're right. But I just was trying to say, what was it, a month ago? We were saying like this team's on life support. They're done. Like I feel like Sid has single-handedly said, I'm not, not on my watch.
Yeah.
I'm at least going to give us a chance.
I love
That's
it.
all I was saying. So,
and from that standpoint, listen, as we know with awards, like narratives usually drive it home. You get enough people behind a story, and one of the oldest, tricks in the book when it comes to chasing an award like that is team that was out of it, team not that good, best player drags them. You throw in that he's 37 years old or 36 years old, and everyone's saying get out of there, myself included, and he's like, no, screw that, we're going to drive all the way to the playoffs. And he's got 39 goals, 84 points. Like Sid's going to end up with 40 plus goals, 90 plus assists on a team that does not have anywhere close to the same amount of talent that McKinnon gets to play with, Kucherov, McDavid, Matthews, Panarin, Pasternak. And it's certainly worthy of that conversation. I just think other guys are having remarkable seasons.
Agreed. There's just going to be too many.
Yeah.
And that's, Johnny
was great.
Yeah,
Johnny needs to relax. Come on, Johnny. Just relax a little bit.
I thought it was great.
Relax a little bit. All right, hour 2 coming up. Keith Pelley will join us, the new president and CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. What does he plan on bringing to this new gig? He's been in Europe for a long time. What can he bring from that sports scene and maybe apply to here? And there's a lot to get into with Keith. We're looking forward to that. So we'll catch up with Keith Pelley. Steve Phillips still to come as well. And the Leafs are in action tomorrow night in Montreal. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.